Why don't you stand by the bathroom wall? It'll keep the family photos clean. That was my sister-in-law. 4 hours into her wedding reception, my brother was 30 feet away, laughing at something his college roommate said. The room smelled like gardenias and an open bar and a kind of money that is displayed rather than accumulated. My $5,000 was sitting on the gift table in a craft paper envelope with my name on it. I'll get to what I did about it. But first, you should know about the envelope. Saving $5,000 on a stay-at-home budget takes longer than you would think. 2 years in my case, starting a few months after my daughter Lily was born, and I stopped working. I did it the only way available to me. I ran the household tighter than it needed to run. I bought store-brand cereal every week for 2 years. The kind in the plain white bag that Lily would someday have opinions about but did not yet. I skipped the $14 face wash and used the one from the grocery store instead. I turned down the birthday dinners that cost $80 a head with wine, which meant I turned down more evenings with friends than I would like to count looking back on it now. Every month, I took whatever was left of my personal allowance after the household expenses were paid and moved it into a savings account I had set up in my own name, one my husband Ryan didn't have visibility into. Not because I was hiding it from him, but because it was the only thing I was building from nothing that was entirely mine. No committee. No conversation about whether this was the right priority. My name on the account. My math in the spreadsheet. My discipline making the number grow. 24 months. $5,000 exactly. I planned to give it to my brother Scott at his wedding. It was the right amount for the occasion, not showy and not skimpy, an amount that said, I see this and I'm here for it. The 2 years of careful work were in that envelope, the cumulative weight of all those small decisions held to account. I had it in a craft paper envelope, sealed, with both our names in the upper left corner in my own handwriting. Blair and Ryan Palmer. I carried it from Katy to downtown Houston on a June Saturday, in the bag I bring to events where I need both hands free, through a ceremony in a room that smelled like gardenias and a champagne toast, where I didn't recognize half the faces. I placed the envelope on the gift table when Holly and I arrived at the reception. Third from the left in the second row. I noted where I put it the way I track things. Where the envelope goes, what the number on the bank statement says, what the seating chart confirms, and when. That habit has served me well. The night before the wedding was the rehearsal dinner, held in a private room at a steakhouse in the Galleria area, where the parking structure charged $12 an hour and the menus had no prices on them. Denise's parents hosted it. The Crane family occupied one end of the long table, and the Hoffman family occupied the other, and the distance between those two ends was something I spent most of the dinner quietly cataloging. The Crane side had a fluency with each other that comes from years of the same social contexts, the same country clubs and school directories and charity galas, the language of people who have been comfortable for long enough that comfort is invisible to them. They were not unkind. They were operating in a register that did not require translation and did not offer it. I watched Denise's mother, a trim woman in a cream blouse that was clearly expensive but made to look effortless, move through the Crane guests with the ease of a host in her own territory, touching arms lightly, laughing at things that were already well past landing. I watched the way the Crane men deferred to each other with half sentences, a shorthand that took years to build. The Crane women at the far end of the table had the same posture, a way of sitting that was upright without being stiff, comfortable without slouching, a posture you acquire in rooms like this over decades. Our side of the table was quieter. My mother was the best of us at holding her own in a room like this, which meant she was working at it. I could see the effort in the way she held her wine glass, at a slight remove, and how she asked questions and listened to the answers with her full attention. My Aunt Carrie, who had come in from San Antonio, spent most of the first course examining her bread roll. My cousin Mark had pulled out his phone under the table twice before the appetizers were cleared. Scott was at the head of the table between both sides, working to belong to both simultaneously, visibly tired by the end of the first course, but unwilling to show it because he was in love, and in love you perform endurance. My mother Janet sat beside me. She had worn the outfit she saves for occasions, where she wants to appear that she has considered the occasion. a silk blouse, and the pearl earrings she bought herself the year after my father left, which I have never heard her acknowledge as the defiant purchase it clearly was. She was pleasant and responsive, and laughed at the right moments, and asked Denise's mother polite questions about the Crane family history in Houston. Janet is good at surfaces. She has been practicing them for 40 years. Holly sat across from me, in a green dress slightly darker than mine. She had been my closest friend since our mid-20s, which meant she had been present for every version of the Scott and Denise story as it developed, including the version where I had been cautiously optimistic about Denise for about 4 months before I stopped being cautiously optimistic. Holly had a glass of white wine and was doing the thing she does in rooms where she is gathering impressions, which is to look at everything with the neutral expression of someone who finds all of it equally interesting. Denise worked her way down the table during the main course, introducing herself to the Hoffman side. She was efficient about it, one hand lightly touching the back of each chair as she moved, the circuit of a hostess on her own territory. She reached me and Holly near the end of the Hoffman section. "Oh," she said, "you're the stay-at-home sister. That's so sweet." She moved on before I could construct any response. My mother, 2 seats down, gave a small nod toward the end of the table, the nod of a woman who has registered that the introduction went smoothly, and everyone was gracious, and we are all doing well here. That nod landed on my chest like a flat stone dropped in still water. Sweet. The word doing enormous work in 3 letters. The stay-at-home sister being sweet, the way a manageable thing is sweet, the way an absence is sweet, the way something that does not require accommodation is sweet. She had walked past Holly without a similar assessment. I filed this. Holly, across the table, caught every bit of it. She raised one eyebrow, a slow arch. I shook my head, barely perceptible, a small lateral movement that said, "Not here, not tonight." The dinner continued. The food was excellent in the way of restaurants that do not put prices on the menu because the clientele does not need them. Scott made a toast that was genuine and a little awkward, and people laughed and meant it because the awkwardness was honest. Denise's father made a toast that was polished and long, and referenced Denise's accomplishments in a way that made it sound like Scott was being welcomed into a structure that had existed before him and would continue to organize. Things after. I watched Scott's face during that toast. He was smiling, but the smile was doing some work to stay in place. Near the end of the evening, I went to the hallway that connected the private dining room to the lobby. The hallway had framed photographs of the restaurant's history on both walls, black and white images from the 1960s, which I examined for a moment on my way back. On the way back, I heard Denise's voice around the corner, not lowered, not performing any discretion. "The Hoffman people are fine, Mom. Fine. Not exactly our crowd, but fine." I stopped. I heard her laugh at something her mother said on the other end. Then the call ended, and there was the sound of heels on the marble floor returning toward the private room. I waited 2 full seconds, then walked back to the table and sat down. Holly had poured herself a second glass of wine and was studying the breadbasket with an intensity it didn't warrant. She glanced up at me. I reached for the bread. Before I left the dinner that night, I checked my seating assignment on my phone. The wedding coordinator had texted it 2 days before. Palmer +1, table 3, third from left. I verified it standing by the coat rack in the lobby, phone screen bright against the dim lighting of the corridor. Table 3, third from left. I had the confirmation in my messages. The table existed. The confirmation was in writing. I went home and slept and got up the next morning and put on the green dress I had spent 3 weeks finding in the right shade, the one that would not clash with the bridesmaid dresses, and I drove to the venue. The wedding ceremony was held in the main ballroom of a venue in the Galleria area that had been converted from a bank sometime in the 90s and retained the high ceilings and the sense of a space that was built to impress. White chairs in curved rows, gardenias at every other row in arrangements that were not inexpensive. I sat beside Holly and beside my mother. Scott was at the front of the room in a suit I'd never seen him wear, a deep navy with no tie, looking clean, and a little stunned, the way people sometimes do, at important moments when the importance has finally become real. and is no longer only a thing you are anticipating. Denise was beautiful. I have no complication about this. She was a beautiful bride, composed in a way that suggested she had been practicing composure for this specific occasion and had gotten it right. The dress was a deep ivory, with a structured bodice and a long train that her maid of honor managed with practiced ease at the back of the aisle. I had overheard Scott mention to Ryan over the phone 2 months earlier that the dress had come in at a price he had not anticipated, which he had said with the resigned lightness of a man who has already written the check. The dress was clearly not the number she had mentioned to Scott when she went looking. But that was between them, and watching her walk down that aisle, it was easy to set aside all the rest of it. She was a beautiful bride, and Scott was crying, and those two facts were enough for the length of the ceremony. When she came down the aisle, Scott cried. He is not a crier. I have known my brother his entire life, and the last time I saw him cry before this was at our grandfather's funeral when Scott was 12. He stood at the altar, and when she reached him, his face changed the way faces change when they give something up entirely, and I had the sensation of it in my throat, a tightness that surprised me. He was in love in the specific way that means you cannot see the total dimensions of a thing yet because you are inside it. And watching him from my chair, I was glad for him and worried for him in equal measure. That was the moment I had saved $5,000 for. Whatever else was going to happen that day, that moment was real, and Scott's face was real, and I had been right to come with the envelope. Outside the reception entrance, on the way in, the seating chart was posted on an easel near the double doors. I found my name, Table 3, third from left. Confirmed. I placed the craft envelope on the gift table in the lobby, third from the left in the second row, and Holly and I went through the doors into the reception. The place card at Table 3, third from left, said, Amber Layton, college friend. I looked at it for a moment. The card was in the same calligraphy as all the other place cards, at all the other tables, ivory cardstock, black ink, the same formal script. The name on it was not mine. I had the right chair. The place card had a different name. A waitstaff member appeared at my elbow. He was 20, maybe 22, apologetic in the specific way of someone who has been briefed on an awkward situation and would prefer not to be its messenger. He had a good face for it, a careful, neutral expression that he was working hard to maintain. The bride made some adjustments this morning, he said. There's seating available by the east hallway, through those doors. The east hallway doors led to the transitional corridor that ran between the reception room and the smaller event lounge on one end and the exit on the other. Through those doors, set against the wall near the restroom corridor entrance, were 2 folding chairs with handwritten cards. My card said Blair Palmer in Denise's calligraphy, the same script as all the other place cards, which meant she had written this card specifically, in advance, for this chair by the bathroom corridor. The card had been prepared before today. She had planned for this seat before the wedding morning, before whatever she told the waiter about last-minute adjustments. I stood beside the folding chair and turned the place card over in my hand. The room was filling. I could hear chairs scraping on hardwood as 200 people settled in for dinner, the collective sound of a crowd organizing itself, conversation building to a low roar. The gardenia smell was thinner out here, cut by something from the patio door, and the faint cleaning solution smell from the restroom corridor. A photographer was working the room inside, her flash visible in intervals through the door glass. A string quartet in the corner near the bar was running through something instrumental. Through the glass, I could see Amber Layton already seated at table 3, talking to the woman beside her. Denise came through the reception room entrance, with a champagne glass in one hand and the white dress catching the overhead chandeliers. She saw me. She crossed the threshold into the corridor and came close enough that she didn't need to raise her voice. Why don't you stand by the bathroom wall? It'll keep the family photos clean. She said it the way you deliver a line you have been carrying around for a while, something you have refined through repetition in your own head until it has become exact. Pleasant tone, specific target, complete and self-contained. She turned and walked back into the reception. Champagne glass lifted slightly as she rejoined the crowd. My mother came through the door 4 seconds later. She took in the folding chairs. She took in my face, which was holding still. "Don't make a scene, Blair. It's Scott's wedding." Holly was 3 steps behind her. I know what Holly heard, because she told me later, and she had a recording to prove it. She had been filming the flower arrangements near the entrance when Denise came through and said what she said. Denise's voice clear in the frame, then my mother's response 4 seconds after, both of them exactly as I have described them here. Holly did not tell me about the recording until the drive home. At this moment, she stood in the corridor and said nothing at all, which was the correct thing. I looked through the doorway at the gift table. 20 feet. The craft envelope. Third from the left in the second row. My handwriting in the upper left corner. I walked to the gift table. I picked up the envelope. I tucked it under my arm and into my bag. And as I turned back toward the exit, Denise had moved to watch me from across the room. She stood with her champagne glass held loosely, her head tilted at a small angle, the expression of a woman who is filing information and finding it less than she expected. She had anticipated more. I could see that she had expected a scene. I looked at her directly. The room was loud around her. 200 people in the middle of a wedding reception, none of them paying attention to the east hallway. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll stay out of the frame forever." I walked toward the exit. Behind me, on the floor by the folding chair, I set the place card face down. My hands had picked it up automatically when I took the envelope, the kind of tidying that hands do at tables without instructions. I was halfway to the door before I had any awareness of it. I put it in my coat pocket. The hallway behind the east reception wall ran between the reception room and the smaller event lounge that venues use for bridal parties and quieter side events. I was moving toward the exit when I heard a voice through a glass door, standing slightly open to my left. A compressed, urgent voice. The voice of a person conducting a conversation that is already in progress and is not going well. The glass door to the small lounge was open about 2 inches. Through it, I could see Denise pacing a tight loop in front of a side table, phone pressed to her ear, champagne glass abandoned on the table beside her. One hand was on her hip. Her dress pooled slightly at the back as she turned. She was wearing the posture of someone who has run out of good options and is now managing the absence of them, dealing with a situation she had been hoping to defer until after today. I was standing in a corridor. The door was open. The voice was carrying. I heard outstanding balance. I heard he doesn't know. It was before we were serious. He cannot find out about this. I heard a dollar amount. $87,000. $87,000. Let me be specific about what that number meant to me standing in that corridor. My envelope held $5,000 saved over 24 months of store-brand cereal and skipped birthday dinners and no $14 face wash. $87,000 was more than 17 times that. More than 34 years at my monthly savings rate. If I had started saving the month Lily was born and kept to my same discipline every single month, I would reach $87,000 sometime around the year 2058. That is the number she was managing from the small lounge of her wedding venue, while her new husband stood 30 feet away laughing with his college roommate. She said it with a flatness that comes from saying a number enough times that it has lost its power to shock you, which told me she had been saying it for a while. Long enough that $87,000 had become an ordinary number she was managing rather than an emergency she was confronting. The debt collector call was not a crisis call. It was a maintenance call, a check-in with an ongoing situation. She was not panicking. She was mildly irritated at the interruption. She pulled the phone from her ear and set it face up on the side table, frustrated, to pace another loop. The screen was legible from where I was standing. Collections, Unified Credit Services. 1-800-882-4401. The call timer still running. I took out my phone. I photographed the screen. I checked the photo to confirm it was legible, both the company name and the outstanding balance figure visible in the call detail preview. It was. I put my phone away. She turned before I was completely done moving, but she was looking at the back wall, not the door. I was already in motion. I went to the exit and out into the June heat of downtown Houston, which hit like opening an oven door, thick and immediate after the air conditioning of the venue. Holly caught up to me at the car. She had her hand on my arm, which is Holly's method of stopping traffic when she means it. Her heels were in her other hand. "We are going back in there," she said. "No," I said. "We are not, Blair. She said that to you in front of your mother. In front of me. I heard what she said. And your mother told you not to make a scene." I know what my mother said. Holly looked at my bag. She had watched me take the envelope. "That is going to be a whole thing," she said. "Yes," I said. "It already is." She was quiet for a moment, standing in the parking structure with her heels in her hand, processing the sequence. Then, "I have it on my phone." She said it right in front of my camera. I was filming the flower arrangements when she came through and said it. Every word of it. I stopped with my hand on the car door. "Keep it," I said. "Don't send it anywhere. Just keep it." "Insurance," Holly said. "Yes," I texted Ryan. "Coming home. I'll explain later." I drove out of the parking structure and onto the 59 South, both hands on the wheel, within the speed limit. We had been on the freeway for about 12 minutes when Holly said, "What did you hear in the hallway?" I told her about the debt collector call, the dollar amount, the call screen. Collections, Unified Credit Services. 1-800-882-4401. Holly did the arithmetic in about 4 seconds. She is good at arithmetic. $87,000, she said. Pre-existing debt that Scott doesn't know about. That's what it sounded like. And they're leaving for Turks and Caicos in 3 days. Yes, Scott doesn't know. No. You should call him right now. Not yet. Holly looked out the passenger window at the freeway passing. When? I don't know yet. Not today. My phone lit up on the console. Janet calling. I pressed the red button. "Good," Holly said. I drove the rest of the way to Katie. Ryan was in the kitchen with Lily when I came in. He was cutting grapes in half on the cutting board, the way you do for 2-year-olds. And he looked up when I came through the door and took in my face, just my face, with no expression on it that I was aware of, and he set the knife down. He sat down at the kitchen table with the manner of a man who has learned that sitting down is sometimes the most useful thing you can do. He put both hands on the table and waited. I told him what happened in 7 sentences. The seating chart that had confirmed my table. The waiter who redirected me. The folding chair by the bathroom corridor. The line Denise said, word for word. The envelope retrieval. What I'd heard through the lounge door, the number, the call screen. Ryan was quiet for a moment after the 7th sentence. He has known me for 9 years. He knows the difference between a story that is finished and a story that is still running. He looked at the craft envelope I placed on the counter. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know yet." Lily pulled at my shirt. I picked her up and stood at the kitchen window with her on my hip, looking at the backyard, the plastic play structure Ryan's parents had given us at Christmas, a red and yellow thing that Lily called the slide house. The afternoon was overexposed in the way Houston Junes are. Everything bright and flat and slightly too much, the sky a white blue that is not really blue. I could hear the neighbor's lawn service 2 houses down. I had the envelope. I had the photograph. I had Holly and her recording on her phone. A quality settled in my chest, something with the weight of solid ground under uncertain footing. I should have been more careful about trusting that stillness as anything more than a pause before the next thing came. Janet called 3 more times that evening. I let them go to voicemail. I played them back in order, standing in the kitchen with the phone on speaker, Lily asleep upstairs and Ryan in the backyard. The first one, "Blair, you embarrassed yourself and your brother today. I hope you'll think about what that means. Please call me." The second, 2 hours later, "Denise says you removed a gift from the table. Blair, that is simply not done. People saw. Please call me." The third. Close to 9. I'm not angry. I just want you to think about Scott. This is supposed to be a happy time for him. Please. I listened to all 3 without sitting down, phone on the counter. Then I set it face down and picked up the craft envelope. I counted the money. $5,000. All of it, every bill, organized the way I had organized it when I sealed the envelope 2 weeks earlier. Hundreds on top, then 50s, then 20s. I replaced the bills in the envelope. I set the envelope back on the counter. I counted it twice more before I went to bed. Janet came to the house the afternoon of the second day. She sat at my kitchen table with the manner of a woman who has been doing this for 40 years and still has not stopped being surprised when gentleness and persistence do not produce compliance. She brought a pound cake from the bakery on Jones Road, the one I have liked since I was a child. She set it on the table between us in its white paper bag, the small gesture of something offered before the terms are stated. My mother's gestures have a grammar I have been reading for 30 years. She said the seating thing was almost certainly a misunderstanding, that there had been a last-minute guest addition, that Denise was under tremendous stress in the final hours before a wedding. She said my reaction had made things awkward for Scott and for the Crane family and for people at the table who didn't understand what was happening. She said, in the measured tone she uses when she means all the way through something, that she could not believe I had removed a gift from the gift table in front of 200 people. I said, she told me I would keep the family photos clean if I stood by the bathroom wall. Janet put her hands flat on the table. The fingers were very still. Even if that's what she said, and I don't know if that's exactly what was said, you have to consider the occasion. You have to consider what this day meant for your brother. I said, I am considering it. She was quiet. She looked at the pound cake bag. She looked at me. Outside the kitchen window, a car passed slowly on our street. Do you understand what you've done to this relationship? She said. To your relationship with Scott? I said. Scott hasn't called me to ask my version of what happened. He's on his honeymoon, Blair. I know. There was nothing left to say that would produce a different outcome for her. Janet picked up the pound cake and placed it back in her bag. She did not push it toward me again, or leave it on the table as a goodwill gesture. She said she hoped I would reconsider, that she would call later in the week. She stood up and gathered her things and walked to the door. She drove home. I watched her car back out of the driveway and turn onto the street and disappear at the corner. I stood at the window for a while after she left. On the afternoon of day 2, I texted Holly. She sent it within the hour. The video was 17 seconds of reception flowers, the gardenia centerpiece at the table near the dance floor, gold light from the chandeliers catching the white petals. And then, Denise's voice clear and unhurried in the background as she passed with her champagne glass, every word of the line. My mother's response 4 seconds after, her back at the edge of the frame, Denise's profile visible as she delivered the line and turned. Holly's camera had caught both of them without them being aware of it. I watched it twice. I saved it to my phone. I texted Holly. She texted back, "What are you going to do with it?" I texted, "Nothing yet. Insurance." Same as the photograph. She sent back a single thumbs up and then nothing else, which is Holly understanding that this is in hand. That evening, I was in Lily's room after 7, the bath routine finished, Lily in the nursing chair against my chest, her hand curled around my thumb. The automatic grip that she does without thinking. The grip that will someday become a choice, and right now is just her hand doing what hands do when they find something to hold. The Houston summer sky through the window was doing the thing it does in evenings. An orange-gray that means the heat has not left the pavement or the walls, that it is still radiating from every surface, and will be until well after midnight. My chest was tight in a way that had nothing to do with posture. For 2 days, I had been running a catalog in the back of my mind the way my mind tends to do. The rehearsal dinner, the word sweet, delivered with pleasant finality, Janet's small nod of relief. The $14 face wash I did not buy. The birthday dinners I declined. 24 months of store-brand cereal and surplus redirected into an account with my name on it. Not exactly our crowd, but fine. Denise on her phone in the lounge, the number she said without flinching, and underneath it, something older. The position of being the sister who was manageable, who could be placed by the bathroom wall because she would accept placement. A question surfaced. What if this was what it has always been? A statement of terms, clearly made for a long time, to which the family had quietly consented. The stay-at-home sister from Katie is sweet and furniture. She goes where she is put. Her $5,000 is welcome, but she is not a presence that requires accommodation at the family table. Lily's breathing deepened. Her hand stayed curled around my thumb. The ice maker in the kitchen made its sound. A low clunk, then the rush of ice shifting, then quiet. I stood up. I carried Lily to her crib with a motion I have done enough times now that my body knows the sequence without my mind participating. I tucked the blanket around her ankles. I looked at her face for a moment, the specific slack of a sleeping 2-year-old, entirely at rest. Then I walked to the kitchen. I opened the Photos app on my phone. The image was there, clear. Collections, Unified Credit Services, 1-800-882-4401. The outstanding balance visible in the call detail preview, $87,000. Tonight, Denise was in Turks and Caicos with Scott. Scott's Instagram had posted a photo of an ocean at sunset 2 hours ago, the turquoise water catching the last light. $87,000. The amount she owed a debt collector. 17 times the envelope I had saved for 2 years. The number she had said in that lounge, with the flatness of someone managing a long-running problem, not the shock of someone who had discovered one. I did not send the photo yet. I sat down at the kitchen table and held the phone and looked at the image. A text from Scott arrived. "She's my wife, Blair. Whatever happened, I need you to understand that." 3 sentences. No question mark anywhere in them. He had been given a version of events and was delivering it in the most compressed form possible. The form of a man who has been asked to convey a message he is not entirely comfortable conveying, but who is doing it because the marriage is new and the loyalty is still establishing its directions. The text did not ask what I had seen. It did not ask what I heard. It delivered a position and assumed I would adjust to it. I put the phone face down on the table. 11 p.m., Ryan in bed, the envelope on the counter, the photograph on my phone, Holly's clip saved and backed up. I had every piece. I could send the photo now, before they boarded any connecting flight home. I could send it to Janet. I could call Scott and tell him exactly what I heard in that corridor, and let him do what he chose to do with the information. I could send both the photo and the clip to the Crane family group chat that someone had added me to without asking. But what did I actually want? The money was back. The envelope was on my counter. Accomplished. The photograph was not about the money. My brother was at a resort with a woman who had $87,000 in hidden debt, and who had moved his sister to a folding chair by the bathroom entrance and told her she would keep the family photos clean. That was the reality Scott was operating inside. He did not have the full picture. I could not make Denise see me as someone worth including at the family table. That conversation had already happened, and she had been clear about its conclusion. The stay-at-home sister from Katie is manageable, and manageable things go where they are put. But I could put the information in front of my brother and let him do what he would do with it. I would wait 3 days, let them settle into the honeymoon. Let the narrative set, the version where Blair embarrassed herself and left in a huff. 3 days, then 1 message, 1 photograph, 2 words. I put the phone on the charger and went to bed. The next 2 days ran in a straight line without resolution. Janet left 2 more voicemails. Devin 2. Scott left another on day 2 that I listened to twice. He said he loved me, and he was asking me, as his sister, to call Denise and clear the air. And his voice had the tone of a man who is repeating something he has been asked to say often enough that he has found the version of it he can deliver with some honesty. I listened to it standing at the sink. A number I didn't have saved called twice, Probably someone from the Crane side who had been enlisted to apply pressure from a new direction. I did not answer any of them. I made Lily's breakfast and ran the household and opened my laptop and kept the spreadsheet columns current. The envelope stayed on the counter. The photograph stayed on my phone. The clip Holly had sent me stayed backed up on my phone and in my email. I had 3 pieces of documentation and 224 hours until I sent any of them. 3 days after the wedding, Ryan took Lily to the park at 8 in the morning. The house was quiet from 8 until after 10. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. Outside the window, the sprinkler was running its rotation in the yard across the street, a slow arc of water catching the morning light. I opened my Photos app. I selected the image of Denise's phone screen. Collections. Unified Credit Services. 1-800-882-4401, and the outstanding balance figure visible in the call preview. $87,000. I opened a new message to Scott. I sent the photo. Below it, I typed the outstanding balance in full. $87,000. Below that, 2 words. Ask her. I sent it at 8:47 inches the morning. I set the phone on the table. I refilled my coffee and stood at the kitchen window and watched the sprinkler complete its rotation, then reset, then begin again. Scott called at 8:51 a.m. I watched his name on the screen for the duration of the call. I let it run out. 4 minutes later, his name again. I watched that one too. I set the phone in my bag and picked up my coffee. I had sent him 1 photograph and 2 words. $87,000. And ask her. Whatever conversation was happening in Turks and Caicos right now was between them. I had done the only thing I had set out to do, which was put the information in front of him. He was an adult. He would do what he would do with it. I texted Holly. Lunch today? We have been going to the same Vietnamese restaurant in Sugarland since we were in our mid-20s, and Bun Bo Hue was the most affordable lunch available, and the 2 of us were eating lunch based on what was affordable. The restaurant has not changed much. Small, efficient, cool, in a way that good air conditioning produces when a space does not aspire to atmosphere. Same red vinyl on the chairs, same laminated menus with the photos. The same woman has been at the register for at least 6 years, and has seen us come in often enough that she had the order started before Holly had finished flagging down a server the first time. We always order the same things. Holly gets the bun bo hue because she likes the lemongrass beef and the pork blood cake, which she has been eating without self-consciousness since the first time we came here. I get the bun ryu because the crab broth is specific, and I have never tasted it anywhere else in exactly the same configuration. We split the spring rolls. Holly was at the table when I arrived. She had gotten there first and had water already poured, and she looked at me with the expression of a person who has already read the situation and is waiting to have it confirmed. You sent it, she said. This morning. 8:47. She looked at my bag. How many times has he called? I took out the phone. The missed calls counter showed 47 for Scott, plus the unknown number that had called twice, plus 2 calls from Denise's number that had started coming in the last hour. I showed Holly the screen. She looked at it for a moment without speaking, scrolling slightly to see the breakdown. The server came. We ordered what we always order. The restaurant was filling up for the lunch crowd. Tables around us settling in, the kitchen sending out that broth smell, lemongrass and star anise. And something underneath that I have never been able to name precisely, but that means I have arrived somewhere I intended to be. Holly set down her water glass. Are you going to pick up? Not today. When? When he asks me a question, he actually wants an answer to, instead of delivering a message. Holly looked at the table for a moment. She had known me long enough to understand that this was not stubbornness. Then she looked up. She told you to stand by the bathroom wall, she said. I know. You saved that money for 2 years. 24 months. Every month. And now she's calling you. She gestured at my bag with her chin. I reached in and checked the screen again. The missed calls counter had continued while we were talking and ordering. I turned the phone to Holly. 168 missed calls. Holly looked at the number for a beat. "There it is," she said. I put the phone away. The spring rolls arrived. I ate one. Holly watched me eat one, with the expression of a person who is deciding whether the person across from her is actually all right or is performing, being all right, and then she ate one too, and picked up her chopsticks, which meant she had settled on a conclusion that satisfied her. My phone buzzed once more while we were eating. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "This is Denise. I need you to understand what you've done. Please call Scott." I read it. I set the phone face down, beside my chopsticks. "Denise," I told Holly. "Of course," Holly said. She refilled her water glass from the carafe. The bun ryu was good. It always is. We ate and talked about Holly's job transfer, which had been going on for 6 weeks and showed no sign of resolving itself into a decision either direction. We talked about Lily's playdate schedule and whether 2-year-olds could be over-socialized, which is not a concern I had been carrying, but Holly had developed opinions about since reading something. We stayed through the full lunch crowd and left at 1:30 when the tables were clearing. We stood in the parking lot, in the Sugarland heat, the way you stand in parking lots when you don't want the conversation to end, but you've run out of building. "You're okay?" Holly said. "Yes," I said. And this was true in the specific way that things can be true. It was not that I was fine in any ordinary sense. It was that I was where I was supposed to be, and had done what I had set out to do, and the difference between those two things had taken me 2 years and 1 Saturday in downtown Houston to understand. Holly hugged me. She got in her car. I drove home. In the weeks after, I learned the texture of a situation that has not resolved and will not resolve on any schedule of your choosing. Scott called 11 more times over the following 10 days. I answered once, the second Tuesday after the wedding, when his name came up at 4 in the afternoon, and the timing seemed like it might mean something different. It did not. He said, "Blair, I need you to talk to Denise." I said, "I have nothing to say to her." He was quiet, a longer pause than I expected, and then, "She's my wife." I waited to see if there was a question coming, anything that would tell me he had asked her about the $87,000 and received an answer that raised more questions. There was not. We said goodbye. That was the only call. Janet called twice that week. I answered once. She said, "I don't understand why you couldn't just let it go." I said, "I know you don't." She said, "Was it worth all of this?" I sat with the question for a moment and gave her the honest answer. Yes. She did not know what to do with that answer. I could hear the silence on her end of the phone, the silence of someone who had a script prepared and has reached a line the script did not account for. Neither of us said anything else that mattered. We said goodbye and meant it, and did not speak again for 3 weeks. The space that opened up in that time was not hostile. It was just honest, which turned out to be its own kind of hard. 8 days after the wedding, a Thursday morning, I took the craft envelope off the counter. I had counted the money in it 11 times over those 8 days. Not obsessively, precisely. The number was always accurate. Every bill was always there, hundreds on top, then 50s, then 20s, exactly as I had organized them when I sealed the envelope 2 weeks before the wedding. I drove to the bank and deposited $5,000 into the household savings account, back into the column where it had been building for 2 years. The teller counted the bills in the same order I had organized them and printed the deposit receipt. I folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. I walked out into the parking lot in the August heat. August in Houston is not summer in any seasonal sense. It is a sustained condition. The concrete radiated heat upward from the pavement, and the sun pushed it down from above, and the space between them was close and bright and offered no relief. The account balance in my phone showed the correct number. The $5,000 was back where it had been building, in the same account, same routing number, same column it had come from. It was not a dramatic moment. It was a number in a cell, accurate and in the right place, and that was what I needed it to be. In the weeks after that, Scott and Denise returned from the honeymoon. Whatever conversation had happened between them in Turks and Caicos after my message arrived was between them. Holly sent me an update she gathered from a mutual connection. Scott and Denise had visited a financial advisor within 2 weeks of returning. I read the text, set my phone down, picked up my coffee, and drank it standing at the counter. I had stopped waiting for resolution to arrive in any form I could recognize as resolution. One morning, about 6 weeks after the wedding, I was making Lily's lunch at the kitchen counter and had left my laptop open beside the cutting board. A woman from the neighborhood had come over for a playgroup planning meeting. A woman I had known casually for 3 years, and whose name I associated with the house 3 streets over. She walked through the kitchen and stopped at the laptop. "Oh my God," she said. "Is that yours?" I looked at the screen. It was the household budget spreadsheet, the one I had been maintaining for 3 years. Color-coded columns, linked cells, a 6-month projection built in the right panel, the kind of thing I had been building in one form or another since before Lily was born. "It's mine," I said. "I run the household budget with it." She looked at it for another few seconds, leaning slightly toward the screen with the expression of someone looking at something they want but do not know how to ask for. Then, "Can I hire you to do that for my house?" I looked at her. "To manage your household finances?" "Yes. Whatever you'd charge." I am completely drowning in it. I charged her $400 a month. She told her friend. Her friend told a woman whose husband traveled frequently and who had been opening mail she did not understand for 8 months, utility bills and bank statements that told a story she did not have the columns to read yet. She called me on a Wednesday afternoon and asked me what I charged. I told her. She said yes before I finished the sentence. By the end of 6 weeks, I had 2 additional clients. $800 a month, in cash, going into the same savings account that had held the $5,000. By November, I had 3 regular clients and had raised my rate to $500 for new ones. The spreadsheets I was building for other households were the same kind I had been building for my own. Color-coded columns, linked cells, a forward projection that showed where the numbers were going if nothing changed. Most of the time, the numbers showed that something needed to change. I had new business cards printed. Plain, white stock, my name and email, and the phrase, "Household Financial Management." I ordered 50 of them. By November, I had given out 11. 6 months after the wedding, Lily had her regular pediatric appointment at the office on Westheimer. November in Houston is technically fall, which means 68 degrees and everyone wearing scarves because the calendar says they should. The pediatric waiting room has a freshwater tank along one wall that Lily has been examining with increasing seriousness since she was old enough to reach the glass. She crossed the waiting room when we arrived and went straight to it, one hand flat against the surface, tracking a yellow fish that was moving in a slow oval near the filter. Holly's message came in while I was sitting in the plastic chair. "Did you see the thing about Denise and the credit counselor?" She forwarded me a tagged Instagram post. Someone from the Hoffman side of the family had found a business card for a credit counseling service in Denise's bag and photographed it and sent it to the group chat, not fully understanding what it indicated, but correctly reading that it was significant. I had left the group chat in September. Holly had stayed. I looked at the photo of the business card on Holly's text. Atlas Financial Counseling. A phone number. A web address. I put my phone down. The tank made its small filter sound. Lily was still following the yellow fish, which had stopped its oval and was hovering near the glass as if it had chosen to return the examination. Her forehead was 2 inches from the tank glass. Her breath was fogging a small circle against it. The fish held its position, fins moving in tiny adjustments, looking at her, looking at it. What I was in possession of at that moment was not triumph. It was closer to the settled quality of a number that has been verified. Nothing new, nothing surprising, accurate. The credit counselor card was not a surprise. $87,000 is not a number that resolves itself by taking a honeymoon. My business cards were in the side pocket of my bag. The same bag I had carried to the wedding 6 months before. I reached in and took one out. Blair Palmer, Household Financial Management. The same name Denise had written in calligraphy and assigned to a folding chair by the bathroom wall. The nurse called Lily's name. I put the business card back in the side pocket. I took Lily's hand and we walked to the exam room. She looked back once at the fish tank, and then her attention moved to the hallway ahead of us, to the next thing. I had stopped waiting for resolution to arrive in any form I could recognize as resolution a long time before this. The credit counselor card in Denise's bag was not resolution. It was a number in a cell, making itself visible. $87,000 does not resolve by being kept private. It resolves by being addressed, or it does not resolve at all. And that is a different kind of problem, with a different kind of timeline, and Scott and Denise would be working through it on a schedule that had nothing to do with mine. There is a place card in a drawer in my kitchen. I found it in my coat pocket about 2 weeks after the wedding, tucked alongside a hair tie and a receipt from the ceremony parking structure. My hand had picked it up from the folding chair when I left, doing the automatic tidying that hands do at tables. I had not been conscious of taking it. It was just there when I reached into the pocket. I set it on the counter when I found it. I looked at it for a while. 2 years. 24 months of store-brand cereal, and the $14 face wash. I had been carrying an idea, without examining it clearly until that moment, that care expressed through discipline would be visible. That the envelope would speak for me in a language the room would hear. That, arriving with $5,000 saved from a household budget, saved by choosing differently every month for 2 years, would register as a presence that could not be placed by the bathroom wall without the room understanding the error. This is not how the language works. The envelope is not legible to someone for whom you are furniture. The $5,000 does not translate into presence in a room where you have already been categorized as an absence. The accounting does not convert. The 24 months of discipline, and the store-brand cereal, and the birthday dinners I declined are legible to me, and to Ryan, and to Holly. They are not legible to someone for whom my presence at the table is a minor logistical inconvenience to be managed in advance, in writing, in the same calligraphy used for every other place card. I can see this now in a way I could not see clearly then, standing at the gift table with the envelope in my hands, and Denise watching from across the room with that tilted head expression. She was not filing information about what I had saved. She was filing information about what I would accept. The place card sat on the counter. Blair Palmer, in Denise's script. I opened the drawer where I keep Lily's drawings, the ones I haven't framed yet. Construction paper squares in the colors Lily chooses, shapes that are approximately figures, circles that are approximately heads. She draws without understanding representation yet, making marks because making marks produces something, and what it produces is interesting to her. This is enough. The not knowing yet is not a failure of the drawing. I put the place card in the drawer, behind the latest drawings, face down in the dark. Blair Palmer. My name, in Denise's script. In the drawer with the construction paper figures, not in the trash, and not on the mantle, and not framed. In the category of things I am keeping, that do not need explaining to anyone, alongside the things Lily made that she does not yet have the words to explain. I closed the drawer. The kitchen was quiet. Tuesday morning. The coffee was going. My laptop was open on the counter, the spreadsheet for my third client still in column A where I had left it. She was the woman whose husband had 3 separate expense accounts she had not been given access to, whose utility bills had been running 40% over the previous year without an explanation she could find. She had found my household financial management card at a school event 2 weeks before, and called me 2 days later at 8 in the morning, before her kids were up, in the voice of someone who had been waiting to make that call. She did not need me to tell her something was wrong. She had been reading the numbers for months, and the numbers were telling her clearly. She needed someone to sit down with the columns and show her precisely what they said, in a language she could bring into a conversation and not be told she was misreading. That was something I could do. I pulled up her file. Income, fixed expenses, discretionary, the 6-month projection, I had started building from the documents she'd sent. The numbers were not what she had been told they were. The gap between what she had been told and what the column showed was specific and substantial, and would not get smaller by being left alone. I set my coffee beside the laptop. I found the cursor in the next empty cell of column A. I started typing.